You talk about the importance of honesty and truth quite a bit, which is another thing that resonates with me a lot. And I like to have certain rules and guidelines in my life that I know can make decisions, so I don't have to leave that to my subjective, random, arbitrary decision-making machine that I have. So if someone sets out to only ever tell the truth, would that be setting themselves up for success or failure? And is there ever a time to not be truthful? For example, we've asked guests on this podcast before. Tom Bilyeu, funny enough, had a really interesting answer to this, which is, if your wife doesn't look good in a dress, do you tell her?
You say, don't ask me questions like that unless you want the answer. My answer to that is yes, you tell her. But the thing is questions like that aren't realistic in a way because they strip out the necessary context. You can't tell your wife how she looks in a given outfit unless you've negotiated how to do that thoroughly. Right? So that would mean, for example, that both you and her are pleased if she looks attractive. And you might say, well, of course a husband's going to be pleased if if his wife looks attractive. It's really? How attractive? And to who? And when exactly? And also why? And those are very complicated issues. And so you see, there's no shortage of men who punish their wives every single time they look attractive. Just like there are no shortage of wives who punish their husbands every time they do anything competent. You might say, well, why would that happen? Well, let's say you've had bad experiences with men and you can't distinguish between competence and tyranny. So every time a man makes a decision to do something, you see that as a manifestation of patriarchal power and you quash it. And then a year later, your husband's completely useless. And you wonder why you've been saddled with him, but that's fine because you can play martyr to your friends. And so that's a good deal for everybody. And so the same thing applies to attractiveness on the part of your wife. It's do you trust her? And how short should her skirt be when she goes to the bar with her friends? Exactly. And when are you going to say something about it? Well, there's a lot of preparation work that has to be done before you. If my wife asks me if something that looks good on her, I tell her. And lots of things look good on her, so that's a good deal. And I buy a lot of her clothes, which I find extremely entertaining. She also, the reason you want to be able to tell her is because she has to be able to trust you. But she also has to not play stupid games, because the stupid game is, well, I'm asking you if I look good in this dress, but really what I'm trying to figure out is, do you love me? That's not a straight game. It's are you asking whether I love you, or are you asking whether or not I look good in this dress? And people are often very murky in their questions. You don't know what the hell they're up to, and neither do they. And so it's very difficult to respond in a truthful manner when you're in a complex situation and 5 different things are going on. I know it's the white lie conundrum, right?
Yeah.
If you ever have to tell a white lie, you haven't set the situation up properly. There are times when the best you might be able to manage in that situation is a white lie, but that doesn't make it good.
There are other situations that I can think of. For example, let's say there's been a long relationship. These people have been married for 10 years, but then there's an ex of the guy and she reaches out to the guy for no reason. And this was a girl that your current wife has always had a little bit of come on, what's going on over there? They always were very insecure. They felt uneasy about that past relationship, right? And you've tried your best to talk it through, but you haven't done it, I guess, to make her comfortable enough. And you don't know if you can. Well, she texts you. Do you tell your wife that she texted you knowing it's just going to devolve into this thing when you have no feelings for your ex at all whatsoever, but you know it's going to create a catastrophe, all these arguments and plates will be thrown, whatever. Do you still tell her, or do you just throw it to the side because it means nothing to you?
Well, any secrets that you keep from your wife, you don't have to tell anyone everything. I mean, first of all, who wants that? And you have a right to privacy. But keeping secrets from the person who's adjacent to you is not helpful. It's just not helpful because it means there are areas of your shared life that are off limits. And partly that's not good for you because then you don't have access, let's say, to her intelligence and perception in those situations. No, I would have to know the details because the details in a situation like that matter. But the optimal solution to that problem is to work it out so that that problem no longer exists, so that you're not jealous of each other's exes. And, that's complicated because, well, are you fully committed to your wife? And why should she believe that? What do you mean fully? Exactly. And so those are very complicated issues, and people check each other out with regard to such things all the time. You know, little kids will misbehave, especially if you bring them to a new situation. And you might say, why the hell are they misbehaving? They know perfectly well what the consequences of that will be, especially if you're, a diligent disciplinarian and the rules are minimal but clear, while you bring your kids to a new situation and they act up. Well, why? Well, because they want to see what you'll do. Well, why? Because what you do defines the new situation. And they'll risk punishment for that. They want to know. So they'll bug you, even if they're bugging you in a way that has resulted in something unpleasant for them consistently in the past. It's like, no, I want to know. Well, a lot of that's relationship between a man and a woman. It's like, what are you up to? Well, did you ask me straightforwardly? Well, probably not, because that's hard. But that I could torture you into some revelation. And I want to know, because my life depends on it. So people play pretty rough games. It's better to get the game straight. That's hard. Because the question, how committed are you to your wife? That's sort of indistinguishable from the question, how committed are you to your own life? How committed are you to the journey up Jacob's ladder? How interested are you in spending some time in hell just because it's entertaining and you don't have anything better to do? These are hard things to sort out. How much trouble do you want to cause exactly for that? Exactly for the delight of having the problem, a false adventure.
So everyone needs to be playing the same rules of the game.
That's the minimal
the
basis
basic understanding.
Yeah. You got to have a constitutional framework in your marriage, let's say. It's a bit more complex than that because you also have to agree on the rules of transformation. So let's say you have a friend and you can play a game with the friend, but now you have a little bit more sophisticated friend and you can play this game and that game. Mm-hmm. And then an even more sophisticated friendship would involve a multitude of qualitatively different games. Well, then you need to negotiate transition rules, right? How do we change the game we're playing? So that's a bit more complex than just the constitutional framework per se. But yeah, you have to. Well, that's what traditions do for people mostly. It's like men and women, in principle, once had traditional roles. Well, why? Well, you want to negotiate every little thing with your wife? Just try. Who should do the dishes and when? You can spend 5 years figuring that out. All the, what would you say, resentment and irritation that come along with the kitchen. God, what a mess. It's very difficult for people to negotiate a relationship from scratch. And so generally what human beings do is default to something approximating tradition because it solves the complex problem. And then, the radicals go in there and muck up the tradition, and then people are just lost. They have no idea what to do. They have no idea how to negotiate. They don't even know what they want. Like many people, when they're conversing, it's like they throw out an indication of their misery, but it's ill-defined and you have no idea what would satisfy it. Neither do they. It's like an endless mining expedition.